And I thought this would be a really great opportunity just to begin a discussion around online learning, perhaps dispel a few myths and promote a greater understanding about what it looks like in those that have lived through it. So this morning we got three really great panelists, and I would like to thank them for taking the time to have this conversation, and I'd like to introduce them at this time. So our first panelist, representing the online administrator and teacher, is, hold on here, do this low tech, Mandy Adams Brazil, and she is a school leader for Kansas Connections Academy. Mandy's been the school leader for KCA for 3 years and has served as an assistant principal for the 2 years prior to that. Prior to being an assistant principal, she spent 6 years in the classroom at a brick and mortar school. So she's kind of had the best of both worlds. She's currently working on her doctorate in educational leadership and policy. So here fairly soon, we're going to be able to call her Dr. Adams Brazil. So thank you so much for coming, Mandy. Our second panelist is Leanne Kramer-Nasser, and she has two beautiful daughters, as you can see. Leanne is a learning coach for Carolyn and Charlotte, who are both attending online school. Her family began looking into alternatives to traditional school options when there were some issues around bullying or children being bullied. And she eventually enrolled her daughters in an online school in the 2017-18 school year. I'll let her tell you about how that's going. From the perspective of our conversation, she's loving the empowering flexibility that the school's provided her and her family. As examples, Carolyn, her daughter Carolyn, takes advantage of a dedicated comprehensive STEM program, which is her area of interest, and she also enjoys the ability to learn at her own pace. Whereas Charlotte, her other daughter, travels across the country to compete in her Irish dance competitions, which is fantastic. So welcome, Leanne. And last but not least, we have Frankie Moscato. And Frankie is a remarkable young lady. Frankie, well, after years of being bullied at her local public school, Frankie's emotional health was beginning to suffer, and her parents recognized that she needed a change. So they actually decided to enroll her in a private school. And the bullying then continued, and her grades started to suffer. And so they started researching other options, as most parents would do. And that's when they found online schooling. And Frankie was enrolled in Wisconsin Connections Academy. She flourished online and was able to focus on what she loves the most, and that's her singing. She's graduated with the class of 2020 and will be attending the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay in the fall. I wanted to stop here and just recognize the fact that, you know, Frankie is an amazing singer. And, you know, I've downloaded her music, and my wife and I just love it. And I would encourage you guys to do the same. But the thing that really impressed me more than her gift of singing was the fact that, having been bullied, you know, a young adult could get really bitter about the things that happened to them. And she has turned this around and used it for a positive. She is an activist for bullying prevention and suicide prevention. And, you know, her music, some of the songs that she has written and performed address those issues. So just wanted to stop and recognize that and thank her for her time and her talent. And so welcome, Frankie. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can all see each other. So we have a handful of questions and a short amount of time. I want to leave time at the end for Q&A for our audience members. So let's get started. So at Pearson, we always say, although online learning is available for all students, it isn't the best fit for every student. Tell the audience a bit about your background and your story. We want to hear your story. What made you decide that online learning was right fit for you, whether it is for you, your family, or in Mandy's case, her career? Was it as you expected, or were you surprised, and why? So I'm going to open it up. Let's start off with Mandy.
Thank you, Cliff. And I knew as a brick and mortar teacher that from early years that education was my passion and that I wanted to dedicate my life to that. And I loved my time in my brick and mortar school. I was a director of debate and forensics and had a chance to interact with just amazing kids. But as I accumulated my years of brick and mortar, I just knew that brick and mortar was not the answer for everyone either. So Cliff, to your point, yes, absolutely, virtual is not the answer for every student, but as I would walk the halls of my brick and mortar and just observe student behaviors and interactions, I just knew that it wasn't the solution for everyone and that there had to be more options out there than a traditional classroom. And that's when I started to explore other opportunities and found the virtual world and Pearson and Connections Academy schools, and took the leap and jumped into working for one. And during that time, I have absolutely fallen in love with the virtual options as well. Brick and mortar, like I said, was a great place for me to start my career, and I enjoyed my interactions there. But being in the virtual world has allowed me to have more opportunities for solutions for children and for solutions for education overall. So as I continue my doctoral program, my focus is on policy and leadership to identify the ways that students can continue to find virtual as an option, and to make sure that we've got virtual as an option on the table for all families, rather than brick and mortar being the only option as some see it now. So that is how I found this as my career. Thank you, Cliff.
Great, thank you so much. Leanne? Same question.
Okay, well, Cliff mentioned in the introduction about me that, you know, we started looking for, my daughters were in a private parochial school, and we ran into a couple problems. One of them specifically being bullying with my older daughter, and a school that just wasn't willing to do anything other than say, well, you just got to teach her how to suck it up, Buttercup. And that they didn't even, I can't even say they put it more gently than that. It was actually a little more harsh the way it was worded to me. And so between that, and I actually had a teacher tell me that Caroline reads too much, and that it was distracting and disruptive. Right, I know. Why would a teacher say your kid reads too much? But her grades were always strong, but we just, it wasn't a good fit. And so by the time she was going into middle school, I know that middle school for girls is the worst time as far as bullying is concerned, and those social mixes. So we started looking for a better option. I know my daughter in homeschool was not going to work with the two of us personality wise. So I started looking into cyber options. And when we came across Connections Academy, and our school in Pennsylvania is called REACH, it is a STEM focused school. And that is, I mean, my daughters are tinkerers. They like to build everything under the sun. So, you know, I started showing Caroline the information. We attended a webinar for families pre-enrollment, and she was like, I think I want to do this. I asked my younger daughter, do you want to do this? And, you know, gave her the same info. And her only concern was, can I sleep in and wear pajamas? And so we were sold on that. But I have to tell you, I strongly believe that switching to online school was the best decision I'd made for my family. We love to travel. We are huge fans of road trips, not right now, obviously, but so for us to be able to just get in the van and go somewhere and be able to enjoy that time and that flexibility has been phenomenal for us. Whether it's Caroline is crew on a historical tall ship, so whether it's getting her to a port for a pickup or a drop off, with Charlotte with dance competitions, my husband and I both have really flexible work schedules. And so because I'm also an online teacher, and so I have that ability that I can log in from anywhere and teach my college classes. It's really been amazing for us, and I think we're a stronger family. I think we're better for it. I think my children have never been more encouraged by educators in their lives, and so I am so grateful that we found an option, because brick and mortar wasn't for us. But yeah, so that's kind of how we ended up here and why we love it so much.
Thank you, Leanne. Frankie, same question.
First of all, thank you for having me. Thank you, Mr. Cliff. I'm so honored to be here among all these amazing women, and all of you are very inspiring. So for me, kind of like you mentioned in your kind intro, so I first went to a public school and I left in the middle of 7th grade. And even after I went to a private school the next year, it started out amazing, but eventually I realized that the kids were all just acting nice to me, and the whole school was just my small class of kids was riddled with head games and backstabbing and lying. And I remember reaching out. I wrote private notes to my teachers. My parents reached out to the principal and the school counselor, and we received nothing at both brick and mortar schools. But after my second school, when I was in freshman year, it was my softball coach who recognized what was going on under the radar on the field and in the dugout. So he referred my family and I to Connections Academy in Wisconsin. And at that point, my whole life was just starting to open up and get better again. And we made the quick decision within just a couple weeks. We took the leap of faith, and I'm not going to lie, the first couple months was hard. You know, you have to be disciplined, but I'm very blessed to have love and support at home. And very quickly, I was amazed by the support from my teachers. These are real teachers that actually know me. And my entire experience was astounding after 3 years at Connections Academy. And the flexibility was also amazing. Not only did my love and passion for school grow, but I found that I was able to volunteer at 2 different hospitals. I was elected as the president of the National Honor Society. I was able to, like you said, audition for American Idol, twice perform for the Bucks and the Packers, all thanks to this wonderful school.
Thank you, Frankie. It's pretty impressive. I appreciate it. So the audience here today are public school district administrators who are interested in providing in-district options for online education. If you were to give one piece of advice to them to take home to their communities and their districts, what would that be and why? Let's start off with Mandy.
Thank you, Cliff. And Frankie, I will echo that. I am thrilled to be here with all of you as well. And very talented Frankie and Leanne, so thank you both also. And I would definitely say when we are thinking about making the shift to offering some virtual options in a standard brick and mortar district, my number one piece of advice would be open-minded. It can be hard to wrap your brain around what virtual school might look like, what blended options might look like in your individual district, and being open-minded and willing to just dive into some of the research as well as reviewing your options with experts who have been in this world and had a chance to fine-tune and find best practices are going to be the people that you're going to want to connect with and the companies you're going to want to seek out. So just be open-minded, be aware that it's not going to look the same, but that a lot can be accomplished online. I know everyone kind of had a chance to experience that in the spring a little bit. So minds are already opened, courtesy of the status quo of our world right now. But be open-minded, be flexible, know that it will look a little bit different, but you can have high rigor, you can have high expectations, and you can have amazing student results in a virtual world.
Thank you, Mandy. Leanne, same question.
My biggest thing is to remember that just because you're not in the same room, you're in the same space. And it's hard when you're not physically near someone, and some families aren't going to want to turn on their cameras because they don't want people seeing inside their homes for a number of reasons. But when you're connecting in a remote classroom, in an online classroom, you're still in a classroom, and you still have personalities and people and all the things that you would do in your physical space. All it takes is an open mind, and you can do that in a virtual space. It might take some apps and it might take some training, but just, you know, as Mandy was saying, that open mind, you'll find it's weirdly liberating. And I don't think that, I don't think for one moment that my children aren't having classroom experiences just because they're not in the same physical space as their teacher and their peers. They know their teachers, they know their classmates, and you still can have that. You still have that personal connection. You still have that ability to reach one, teach one. And once you realize that, you know, a classroom isn't 4 walls, a classroom is people, that will really start opening doors and really helping with that mindset.
Thanks, Leanne. Frankie, you want to weigh in on the question? What piece of advice would you have?
I would say that it's important for parents or guardians, as you know, their coaches. I think it's important to be adequately accommodating. Like I mentioned, it really, you know, Connections Academy isn't a cake ride. It's rigorous, but at the same time, students are given their own schedule. You know, they are in charge of themselves for each day as long as they check off each class. But for me, you know, events are not always on the weekends. Sometimes I'll have to travel in the afternoon, and there'll be times where I'll come home late at night and I'll have a test to do or in a couple classes. And you know, while I'll want to take a shower and just go to bed, I need my parents to just push me and give me that little nudge to keep going.
Great,
It's
thanks.
all a team effort.
It's a team effort. So time management for students and families and teachers is an important part of online learning. And I think a couple of you already mentioned this. Can you take us through a typical day for a student, teacher, or parent? What are some of the tips, tricks, and traps of time management? Frankie, let's start with you since your mic's open.
Well, I'd like to think of myself as a very schedule-oriented person. I've always, you know, loved colored notebooks and colored pens and pencils, and but you know, while I mentioned you can have your school at any time of the day that you want, I still like to stay on track. So I will get up at 7:30 and start right at 8, and I'll finish at about 1 o'clock or 1:30. And my teachers are available from 8 o'clock till 3 p.m. every single day, if not later, which is very nice. So they're always available for a phone call and an email. But schedules are very helpful if you make your own schedule for each day. That's definitely one piece of advice for me.
Great, thank you, Frankie. How about you, Mandy?
I would echo that scheduling is key. So as district administrators, if you're looking for virtual options, I would recommend that your teachers have specific work hours, like as Frankie was saying, where students know that they're always available. Of course, your teachers will have classroom options and times, you know, time to connect with students, but having those open hours that are set throughout the day are important. And once you've got that schedule set for yourself or your staff, it is really important then to make sure that you've got standing meeting times. So a day in the life of an administrator and a teacher balances between meeting times for faculty to come together and vertically align, meet with one another, and collaborate on goals. It means that your teachers, as a teacher, you have set standing times for students to come in, both whole group, and you've got small group intervention times, as well as time for your teachers to just grade and respond to student needs as they arise. So very similar in that in a brick and mortar, you're going to have that set schedule. From the teacher side, you've got that set schedule, but you've got a lot of flexibility in being able to respond to students and their needs when you don't have a classroom full of kids in front of you 8 hours of the day. So there is flexibility built in, but scheduling that time out and what that flexibility looks like is very important.
Thanks, Leanne. Excuse me, Mandy. Leanne, you want to tell us what it's like being a parent of an online two online students?
Sure. It's about as fun as juggling cats some days. I will say that I usually tell people I have structured flexibility. And I know that sounds like a weird oxymoron, but I start my day as I come in, I log in, and I look at what's on my children's planners. And so I know kind of where my children don't like math. And so I basically need to know that whenever they are accomplishing math during the day, I kind of need to be available to them. My girls are super independent, so that's really the biggest touch point for me. But I know what they need to do, and I know roughly the amount of time, because we're now in our 4th year with this, I know about how long it takes them to get their work done, and when I need to kind of prod along and push. Now we do, because with Connections, our live lessons are optional for the students, so they can attend, but if not, it's recorded for them to come back to. And if your district has a policy that allows for recording, that makes it wonderful for families, because for, you know, whatever reason happens, the internet isn't working at home. You know, we had somebody hit the telephone pole outside my house and our internet was down for 3 days. And you can only hotspot so much from a phone. But having that ability to go back and rewatch the instruction is huge if you can make that available to families, especially for, I know friends who have little ones at home, they're like, I can't have my child attend class while the baby's trying to take a nap. And so it's remembering that, you know, these families, they are trying to balance life and madness. And so for me, it's staying organized, like Frankie and Mandy were both saying, and kind of having that open availability. But for me, it's basically a bunch of check-ins and touch bases. I hate being a taskmaster, but that's kind of what the parent role feels like. I like to say that I'm the secretary for each of my children. I manage their schedules and hit them with their agenda first thing in the day. So it's, as a parent, you do find yourself kind of fulfilling that business manager role, and for teachers to support parents and realize, like, this isn't kind of what a lot of us anticipated parent life being like. I went from driving the mom taxi to managing the Zoom schedule. So it's finding that structure, but balancing it with flexibility, because life is still happening in this house.
Great, thanks. I love that. So there are some that cite socialization or student socialization as a problem and believe that students suffer from not seeing the teacher and other students face to face. How would you respond to that? Let's start with Leanne, since your mic's open.
You know, that's the question that I get the most as a cyber parent. And it's the question that makes me roll my eyes so hard you probably can hear it across the country. Because I mean, I really feel that if you're doing it right, if you're letting the children know that you care as a teacher, they know you. And my children have friends in our area, in our region, in our state, because we do have outside of school activities, or, you know, field trips and such structured stuff that we have gone to in the past. But these are people that they're seeing their faces, they're, you know, collaborating. I love, my daughter has her stock market team. There's one in Texas, there's one in Spain, and one in California. So for them to coordinate time zones and have those interactions, but she says, Mom, they're my friends. And we've seen friends at people at events in the state, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's nice to meet you in real life. But you know, there are those opportunities. We're involved in our community, so we see people at other such things. But one of the things that I know my Charlotte really loves is that they had Lunch Bunch last year. And it was just an open office hour. Sometimes it was a homeroom teacher, it was a counselor, and they had virtual games up there, or just icebreakers, or things for the students to get together and have fun. And that was wonderful. She's my social butterfly. Caroline would be happy if she never left her room. But Charlotte, she thrives on that. And so she had those opportunities. They're there. Like I said before, you know, it's, being with somebody doesn't mean you're in a physical space, and social distancing has, you know, taught us that we shouldn't be in that physical space anyway. But it's just opening your mind to how can we get people to connect and meet and, you know, make these connections in a virtual environment. You can still do it. It's just, you know, it is what it is, and just getting over that idea that you can't be social. Stop thinking that. It's totally possible. People are doing it, and we're doing it more than ever as adults too. So
Become a generation of Zoom.
Right?
So, Mandy, how about you?
Absolutely, the generation of Zoom. I think our students will have a different life as they know it than we have had ourselves. So I would definitely say that's probably the number one question we get from people that we interview is, are you connected to your students? Do you have relationships? And the answer is absolutely yes. If you go back and ask anyone who has asked us that question that we have hired, after time in serving as a virtual teacher, they will tell you that they are more connected to their students, that they have more relationships. And that is just a matter of being able to be one-on-one and people being comfortable. To Leanne's point, they're in their own space and you're in your own space, but you're together. And that opens up the door for comfort levels to be increased, and for the things that students might be feeling in a brick and mortar classroom where they feel overwhelmed, you know, with other students, or they feel uncomfortable in the space that they're in. All of those walls are down. So we've decreased barrier to entry for those relationships. And so absolutely you have high quality relationships between staff and students. We see that on a regular basis. We hear that from families and from teachers. And the tips and tricks to that, I would say, are just being very intentional. Those relationships are there because both families and teachers are very intentional about establishing those relationships. Our students want those relationships. They're seeking them. They're there because they do want to connect with teachers, and our parents are as well, to Leanne's point. So relationships are not an issue. There is some intentionality behind it that needs to be there. And sometimes we have to seek out more students than they would like to be. We sometimes call ourselves like, it's like being a debt collector a little bit. You just got to keep trying with some kids more than others, or more with some parents more than others. But those relationships are 100% possible. And we have found that they are higher quality in the virtual setting as a result of decrease in barriers to entry.
Great, thanks, Mandy. Frankie.
Yes, I was immediately impressed my very first day of school at Connections Academy, which was sophomore year for me. We had picture day, and we had hundreds of kids all, you know, we were all in a big place, and we all got to meet each other, and teachers were trying to connect me with other kids. And that was just the very beginning. And because of my relationship with my school, I'm just eager to participate in important events. Like I mentioned, National Honor Society, I was able to have one-on-one phone calls weekly with different kids and just get to talk to them. And we would talk from 30 minutes to just an hour, just getting to know each other, and we loved it. There's field trips, and there's tons of other clubs. And I will say that my own teachers will travel across the state to watch me perform. They'll bring their families. Just last night, I had a gig in Wisconsin, in Berlin. And one of my friends surprised me from Connections Academy. She showed up with her family, and it was a wonderful time. And this is summer right now, and I just graduated, and it's still happening. So these are lasting friendships that I've created.
Great, thank you, Frankie. Scott Rodman had a question about social emotional learning and would like Mandy to address that. So Mandy, how is your social emotional learning with online learning? SEL has always been a societal concern with online learning. Now we're all thinking about how to incorporate SEL and/or distance learning. So could you address that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, Scott. And to your point, it's something that we're all thinking about. It's always on the forefront of our minds. So first I will say we build that into our curriculum. You know, our lessons we've really worked to, Pearson has worked to develop our curriculum to make sure that social emotional learning is built into the lessons that are delivered to students. And then as a school administrator, we've worked to make sure that our staff are all trained on social emotional learning. We've got a K-8, we're a smaller school, so we just have one K-8 counselor and one high school counselor, and they train our team on tips and tricks for social emotional learning in the virtual setting once a month, as well as we create the space for our teachers to share best practices regarding social emotional learning at that same time. And so we make sure that we attack it from the curriculum standpoint as well as the training standpoint. And then, as Leanne noted, we then create space for our students. So our counselors have, you know, our K-8 counselor has a little bit more rigid schedule in terms of small groups that she has for students, and they meet on a weekly basis around the student schedule. So they've got that standing time to come in and meet with their small group. And like I said, it's a little more rigid because it's kind of topic based. So she surveys K-8 parents and students to identify needs each year and create some small groups around those needs. And then she has those standing small groups on a regular basis. Now our high school counselor does the same. He's got those small groups. They're a little bit less topic specific and a little bit more grade level created so that students can be connected to their peers to support social emotional from that side as well. And then we also just create open space for students to connect with one another. So we have like whole school live lesson times where we'll allow students to do things like have talent shows and You know, that way students can identify who has the same interests as them and start connecting with one another that way. So we try to approach it with curriculum, staff training and development, creating that space from the counseling world, but then also making sure that we build in that fun way to connect with one another so students are isolated.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
There was a question from Nina.
Can I mention one
Yeah.
more quick thing? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
I just thought of something that I'm very interested in mental wellness, and I currently hold a 501c3 foundation to fight teen suicide. And when I was calling these kids during my senior year, there was one kid that seemed a little off, like he didn't have good friendships, and I ended up contacting the school counselor, and we got it all figured out for him. But overall, everybody seems like they're so happy to go to the school.
Thank you, Frankie. And it's pretty impressive what you've done with your advocacy. So we thank you for that effort. That's doing good things for kids, and that's what we're all about. So Nina's question, what tips can you give for creating a sense of connection starting a year online? And what examples do you have of what teachers or staff did to make you feel motivated, stick with your workload, or support you when down, especially with kids who keep things mostly inside? I thought there's a lot of questions in here. And how can we support parents who aren't able to be involved and connected as Leanne is? So let's take the first part. Since your mic's open, Frankie, what tips could you give about staying motivated? You know, the beginning of the year online, what tips and tricks would you suggest?
That's a great question. I would say dedicate a spot for the student. Maybe that's in the corner of the house, but just a place where they just do school and they own it. They feel like they have this ownership. For me, I have this shed outside in my backyard with a heater, and it's my special place, and that's where I can stay focused. That's really what comes to mind for me.
Thank you. Leanne?
Frankie, I was laughing when you said your shed because Charlotte has a cardboard box in my living room. And that is her, legit, that's her learning space, and she decorates it seasonally. And there's art, it's covered and has tablecloths draped over it, and has little Christmas lights in it. It's adorable. So she does have a kind of a unique little learning space to her own space. But as far as creating that, like that sense of community and connection, I do with this is me speaking as an educator, not as a parent as much, but with my students, our first day of class, I always tell them, go find the fuzziest thing in your house. And I put 30-minute timer up on the screen, and I have them go find the fuzziest thing in their house. And then we talk about, you know, why they chose what they chose. Or I tell them to go find your favorite thing. And I give them these weird little scavenger hunts, but it builds community because I had 3 students hold up cats last week when I said, go find your favorite thing. And that was what we ended up talking about for a weird amount of time. But it's just those little things. And it's something I do 2 minutes at the start of a class to kind of build those connections, let them see those similarities, and build those different types of things. And as far as, you know, getting those children who keep things inside, I've mentioned that my Caroline is not a people person. She's kind of a lurker in the background of live lessons. And she does not like if somebody cold calls her and is like, hey, Caroline, what do you think? Like, she's deer in headlights and is like, oh, no, I'm just lurking here. I'm just listening. But for her, she just gets like a private message from a teacher. Hey, how's it going today? And she has anxiety, and her teachers know that. And so they'll just drop her a quick note saying, how are you doing? Not your grade, you. And when she got that email from a teacher, I'm gonna tear. She got an email from a teacher that said just that. How are you doing? Not your school, just you. And that was the most, like, that meant so much to her, to me, to know that somebody cared. And they noticed she was just a little bit off. She didn't want to turn her camera on. She didn't respond to anything that day. And so it's looking for those little things, and noticing those little types of things that I think it helps build that sense of community and also support and breaking down those walls. And for me as a parent, I mean, I have a monthly check-in with Caroline's counselor, just to kind of see how things go. And it's just a quick email that she just has a reminder in her calendar, email Leanne and see how it's going. Those quick check-ins remind me that like, oh, this school has my back. Because my kids have been failing classes before. They've pulled it up, like thrown a Hail Mary and had it all work out. But having a teacher say like, hey, Leanne, your kids haven't logged in 2 weeks. What's going on? And I'm like, oh, we're in the Grand Canyon. I'm sorry. But another time it's been like, hey, Leanne, your kids haven't logged in a week. I'm like, oh, we're having a breakdown. And I get that support. So it's just paying attention. And paying attention and knowing what's going on kind of in the background has been really helpful with creating those boundaries. I answered like 4 questions in a very long ramble there, and I apologize for taking a long time to blather on. But
Thank you, Leanne. Mandy, how about you?
Leanne, all great information though. I love to hear it. So those are good things from the parent perspective and teacher perspective. So creating that sense of connection to start the year online, to Leanne and Frankie's point, it's normalizing it. So creating that space for we encourage all of our students to have a space that they do school, whatever that looks like, a corner of the room, a cardboard box, have that space, have a set schedule, normalize this virtual learning and the virtual learning options, both in homes and from the teacher perspective. Have students show you their space, have students talk to you about that schedule or what that looks like. And then from the district and teacher side, it's like I said, it's being super intentional. We call all of our families at the start of the school year, whether they're returning or brand new to us, and they have a one-on-one conversation with whoever their homeroom or advisory teacher is going to be. And for our returning families, sometimes that conversation is, hey, how was summer? Do you have any questions? It's a little more relaxed. And then for our new families, it's a lot of logistics. Are you set up? Do you have concerns? What can we do for you? So those conversations look as different as our student population, but it's that intentionality and making sure that we talk to all of our families one-on-one and all of our students one-on-one that helps to establish those connections at the start. And then all of our class sessions in the first week of school are completely social. We tell our teachers, like, we know you want to dive into curriculum. We know it's important, but let's establish some connections. So our teachers just have those social live lessons, get to know birthdays, they do Jeopardy games or bingo, or our younger kids get up and do jumping jacks together. We can't really get a high school group to do that yet. We might keep trying, but it's just being super intentional, creating the space for those relationships to start to form that help to make sure that you've got that connection.
Great, thank you. So I want to be mindful of time. We've got about, I think, 15 minutes left. So let's see, there was another question from Scott who said, thank you, first off. I would love to hear more ideas like the talent show to promote social opportunities. So any great tips? Let's start with Mandy.
Yeah, Scott, and thanks for turning your camera on. It's good to see your face too as we kind of connect with you, so thank you. And I would definitely say we've done the talent show, and you'll hear from Frankie and Leanne, I'm sure. Like, there are a variety of ideas out there that schools can implement across the country, which is nice. So we've done that. Like I said, we play games. We'll create intentional time to do like staff versus student Jeopardy, and always win the Star Wars category. Our staff can't get that together for some reason. So creating the space to have game times. We did a bingo card, like Get Active bingo card in the spring. So we sent them out to the students in advance, and then we got together and our counselor led them through a little bit like of a fitness class, basically. And then we had them show off pictures from their bingo cards. Like, what'd you do to get active this week? Meditation activities, or we'll ask students, what do you guys want to do for our social live lesson time as a whole school this month? And they come back with awesome ideas and opportunities. So just things that you would do in person in an assembly, you can do virtually. It takes a little bit more planning and advanced work. Like I said, sometimes I'll gather the pictures from students ahead of time and just show them off in a slideshow, and then we celebrate all of them there. We've done teacher appreciation weeks. I had students come in and teachers come in and everyone's on camera, and we just celebrated our teachers. Oh, something great your teachers have done this semester. And so, yeah, same things you could do in an assembly, same things that you can do to connect students in person, you can do virtually. Just takes that planning out.
So Frankie, what kind of ideas do you have, and what kind of things have you done?
I'd say that, first of all, yes, the talent show I enjoyed it every single year. Everybody is just amazing. My whole family would be around the computer and just be watching all these talents and dancing and gymnastics, and I was happy to participate in it. But I'd say the most important thing is to just start by connecting with your teachers and build relationships with them first. If you're having difficulties making friends, go to them and really get to know them, and make those extra phone calls with them while they're already, contacting you. They love to hear you call first or you email first. And once you do that, I've found that they try to help me make some friends. So I'll be on a field trip and they'll come up to me and say, "Hey, Frankie, I want to introduce you to these other freshmen or these other sophomores that are just like you." Once they know me, they find other people that have my same, aspirations, and they connect me with them.
Great. Thanks, Frankie. Leanne.
I know we've done a lot of like themed dress up days where Charlotte will be like, it's crazy sock day, or it's, sports attire day, which my girls are always like, we don't have sports attire. So Caroline wore like a mathlete shirt one year, or a Hogwarts Quidditch. That goes in the rotation for, I know, right? She's a Hufflepuff. I don't hold it against her. But Ravenclaw, sorry. But we, those types of themed days. Bring your favorite snack to class, and they talk about the different snacks and things. Color days, and just trying to kind of do those types of things that there was a color war between all the grades and in one of the whole school assemblies, and it was seeing how they could get the color. You had to put as much color behind you in your video to see how you could change the tiles of all the videos that were in there. So, and bring a pet to class day, and bring your parent to class day, which is funny because bring your child to work day is a thing that parents do. So it was bring your parent to class day. That I was like, told my husband, I'm like, you can go to one of these for once, like I'm there all the time. And so it's all of those things that build community, that let people see that we all have things that we're proud of and things that we can do, the talent show, the talk about your favorite book thing, or I know there's all sorts of themed things that go on. So it is, just ways to build community and give people something to talk about in a good way. So.
Great, thank you. So I had a question from Nina. How can we support those parents who can't support their child's online learning? That's a tough question. So Mandy, I think you'd probably be the person to help answer that question. I don't want to put you on the spot, but.
Okay. It is a tough question, Cliff, and Nina, thank you. Good to see your face as well. That's a hard spot to be in. Not everyone has the same space, as to your point, to support their own students, whatever obligations that is that pulls them aside. We have found that just having those really intentional conversations with parents, and some are harder than others, can help to solve that. So what can you do? When can you support your child? If it's not during the workday, when can you, and how can the teacher work with you? So, we have teachers who maybe flex out some time because the family's available at night. So that's when the teacher needs to be available. And not that we expect our teachers to make that schedule shift, but, just we're all teachers, we're all educators. Everyone wants what's best for kids. So our teachers make it work. So we have some very specific conversations in terms of how can you help support your student and when can you help support your student. And then we find ways to meet them where they're at. That's very important. The other thing I would say is that some parents, to your point also, are not going to be as engaged as Leanne are. And so we have to be very persistent. We call again, we find which way works for them, whether that's email, text, phone calls, what's going to work for you where it's not scary for us to be approaching you. And we, having that relationship from the start of the year, when we've had that really welcoming phone call before any issues or concerns arise, help us to also be more approachable. So that when we do have to have the hard conversations of, your student's not getting the support that they need at home, and how can we meet in the middle here, we already have that positive relationship in advance, so that helps too. And the last thing I would say is sometimes we have students who are on success plans. So it's not like it's not a contract, it's not a punishing contract, but it just lays out for the family, here's what we need your student to do every single day to be successful with us. Here's what we are going to do every single day to make sure that your student is successful. And here's what we need you as a parent to do. And when we put a student on that success plan, we don't just, you know, write up a plan and send it home. We have a full conference call with all of the teachers present, all of the family, the student present, and we talk through it. Like, are these things that you can do as a student here with us? And if not, how can we make sure you can? Are these things you can do as a parent? And if not, what can we do? And are these things that you understand that the school is going to provide? So we have different levels of support based off of the need of the family. And we love our parents who are crazy engaged and able to support us. Leanne, like I said, I loved hearing from you. And to Frankie's point, like, she needed that push from her parents, but we know not everyone's set up for that. So we're flexible and we'll meet people where they are.
Great, thank you. Question from Danielle Blackwell. Mandy, this is for you. You talked about weekly PD and collaboration time for teachers. Do you do this on Zoom or in person? Do you have themes for the year? Is it important to have a common design for classes for students? A lot of questions.
I'll tackle it all and hopefully have some answers. Danielle, we meet weekly. We collaborate on a schedule that's grade level PLCs meet twice a month, and then we have vertical alignment PLCs that meet once a month. And then we have kind of a whole staff PLC that meets once a month for training purposes. So we hold a sacred space on our calendar for PLC time and just rotate through which groups are meeting. And we have a school improvement plan. Each PLC is responsible for one of those school improvement goals. And each PLC, it kind of reports out to the staff, here's our goal on a quarterly basis. Here's our goal. Here's the actions that everyone, are working towards doing to accomplish that goal. And here's the data that demonstrates what's working, what's not. And as a group, we've discussed, these ideas. So very student data focused, similar to a PLC you would see in a building. I always say our PLCs run our school. So the theme for the year is, based off of the goals that we've decided on for the year. And we just hold space for that to happen. We've got great, virtually you've got amazing data rich places that you can pull that student data from, and our PLCs dive into it on a weekly basis and just report it out to the whole school on a regular basis as well.
Great, thanks, Mandy. Another question, and I'm just going to throw this out to all three of you. It's from Toshiko. So do you provide parent engagement PD for families at the start of the year to front load information? If so, what types of PD or workshops do you provide your families?
I can use it. I know that Connections has this great resource called Learning Coach Central that has all sorts of stuff. But I know in talking with a friend of mine recently, she said her children's school is at.
Yep, I think Leanne froze. Is that just me or is that everybody? Okay. One of the other two of you want to pick that question up? PD for families. What was it like for the family experience at the beginning of the year? What sort of things should these school districts provide those families in anticipation of a good start?
Okay. So I have found that right away, the dean of students, he was so accommodating to my family. When it could have been the hardest, it was such a big change going from a brick and mortar school to an online school. It could have been even harder, but we had the dean of students. He really made it so helpful for us and so comfortable for my family and I. And right away, our teachers got to know my parents, and they would constantly be emailing them, telling them how I'm doing, always being there for help. We had handbooks, we had everything. They are here for us, and they made it very clear from day one.
Great, thank you, Frankie. Mandy, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just clear-cut expectations. We have open house, virtual open house for families, regular ongoing orientation, and staff members, to Frankie's point, they have a dean of students, we have advisory teachers, just people who are in charge of those communications to families. So you can kind of format it the way that works best for your school, but definitely have a plan in place.
Great,
Yeah,
thank you.
and I also I want to add on quickly, for the first day of school for every year for Wisconsin at least, we would have on our picture day, they would have separate rooms where you'd sign up to go inside, and they would literally have the students and their parents sit in the chairs, and the teachers would take questions and they would answer. So that was the first day of school.
So we've got about 5 minutes left in the session here, and there was one question in the chat about, is it legal to meet one-on-one in Zoom with a student? So I don't know if that's.
Oh, missed that. Yeah. So I don't know if we have any attorneys in the room, but Mandy?
That's something that you did, Mandy? Did you meet one-on-one with students?
Yeah, and to Cliff's point, I definitely have no legal advice for anyone. We do meet one-on-one in students, but in our protected classroom space, it is not in Zoom. It is all recorded and monitored. So I'm not sure what your rules would be or legalities would be in terms of spaces outside of your protected classroom space. We do have one-on-one opportunities with students and teachers.
It's definitely sounds like something districts need to determine what they're going to do. And I think the last thing that I'd like just the group to address is, I mean, you all made the choice to go virtual when you had a choice, right? And so, and there was transition issues with doing that. And now, everyone in this session, for the most part, is facing a situation where they've got parents, students, and staff all forced to go virtual when there is no choice. So what could you, and there's going to be, that's a seismic shift, and there's going to be some pain in that. So is there anything you can do in a closing thought here to provide some direction for folks into how to make this transition less stressful for people?
So for me, I think it's important to think, how maybe some self reflection. How much do you care about your career and your future in college? How well do you want to excel with all of that? And if your answer is, I want to do my best when I grow up, or I want my kid to do their best, Connections Academy is the best choice. And I guess last thoughts before signing off is, if you're still watching and you're still on the fence about online education, don't hesitate to reach out to me directly on frankie.me, franki.me. I'm here to help.
Awesome, Frankie. It's been great to hear from you also. I would say closing thoughts on that is take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. You all are experts in education already. So check that box. You have got this. You know what quality education looks like. You know what it looks like to interact with families, parents, students. And on the flip side, parents know what it's like to have their student at school every day and to have their students engaged in school, and students know how to be students. So let's all establish that this is okay. We've got our bearings about us and a baseline for success here. So as educators, do what you do best, and you'll find a way to make that happen virtually. Engage with kids, interact with them, set high expectations, teach them, support where you can, and breathe through the pain points as you can't, and just know that it's going to be all right. Reach out to experts, reach out to people who have been in the field and kind of been doing this if you do need ideas. But overall, continue to be educators, continue to do what's best for kids, and as long as that's your guiding focus, as it has been as an educator, you're going to be okay.
All right. Well, do you have any closing thoughts, Cliff, to wrap up?
Yeah, well, what I would like to do just to wrap up is thank our panelists. They've been more than accommodating with their time, and I really appreciate that. So thank you so much. And unless there are other questions from the audience, I think we're good to go.